It was a chilly morning in the heart of a vast and untamed frontier, and Thomas Hayes was waking up next to his trusty wagon. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the sun slowly rising, casting a warm glow over the dusty road ahead. Little did he know he was about to find something that would change everything. As he stepped out from behind his wagon, the silence felt heavy, filled only with the sounds of the nearby creek and the soft rustling of leaves. Thomas noticed something strange beneath the wooden frame of his wagon. Curiosity gnawed at him. He crouched down, squinting into the shadows, heart racing a little faster than usual. As he leaned forward, he saw her, the small, delicate figure of a girl no older than 18, sleeping soundly beneath his wagon. Her chestnut hair spilled across the dry ground, tangled in the grass like a wild flower. In her slightly curled fingers, she clutched a folded piece of paper. Thomas felt his heart skip a beat. Who was she? How had she ended up here? He glanced around, searching for any sign of danger, but the area was still and peaceful. Carefully, Thomas reached out and gently shook her shoulder. The girl stirred, her eyelids fluttering open. When she saw him, her eyes widened in surprise. Fear flickered over her face before she pushed herself up, pressing her back against the wheel of the wagon. Who? She stammered, her voice shaky. "I'm Thomas," he replied, trying to keep his tone calm. "I am Sarah," she said, glancing down at the letter in her hand. Her gaze shifted back to him, uncertain. Thomas's mind raced with questions. Why was she here? Did she run away? The look in her eyes told him she was scared, but there was something else there too, a glimmer of hope, perhaps. "Sarah," he said softly, "do you want to talk about it? You seem..." Taking a deep breath, she nodded, still looking uneasy. "I was riding with my father. We were headed to town, but we got into an accident." She trailed off, tears welling up in her eyes. The letter. Her voice broke as she gazed at the paper, her fingers trembling. Thomas's heart ached for her. He could see she was holding back a flood of emotions. He offered gently. Her blue eyes met his, searching for trust. Slowly, she unfolded the letter, its edges crumpled and worn. As she began to read aloud, her voice trembled with every word. "Dear Mama," she read, her voice gaining strength. "If you are reading this, something has happened to us. Please don't worry, we are going to be okay." Thomas felt a knot in his stomach. What had this girl been through? He knew life on the frontier could be harsh, but something about her letter felt so real, so raw. As she continued, he realized this wasn't just a letter, it was hope wrapped in paper. "I have so many dreams to chase. I want to see the world beyond these mountains, to feel free," she said, glancing back at Thomas. Hearing that, Thomas felt a spark ignite. He understood her desire. He had dreams when he was her age, but life had thrown him curveballs too. He had struggled to find his place, just like Sarah was trying to do now. "I believe you can be whoever you want to be," Thomas encouraged. "This road leads to endless possibilities." She looked at him, a bit of doubt still in her eyes. "What if they don't want me? What if..." Thomas shook his head firmly. "You're not a burden, you're a survivor. There's strength in that. You've come this far, right?" For a moment, they shared a quiet bond, a connection formed by struggle. Finally, Sarah took a deep breath, the tension easing from her shoulders. "Maybe you're right, but my father..." Before she could finish, a rustling in the bushes startled them both. Thomas's heart raced again. He stood up, instinctively protecting her as he scanned the surroundings. Then from behind a nearby tree emerged a man with a rugged face, his clothes worn and dirty. The man demanded, eyes darting between Sarah and Thomas with suspicion. Thomas stepped forward defensively. "She needs help." The man's eyes narrowed, fixated on Sarah. Thomas could see the concern in his expression shift toward fear. "She was lost, and I don't need your help, Thomas," Sarah interrupted, suddenly determined. The rugged man stepped closer, the conflict palpable. "No, you can't, but I'm not alone. I have Thomas," she argued, her voice firm yet shaky. "He's been kind." The man hesitated, a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. "By listening," she replied, her voice gaining power. "By helping me understand that maybe there's hope." The man looked at her with a mix of disbelief and admiration. Finally, he sighed, realizing that perhaps he was underestimating her strength. "All right then, what do you plan to do next?" Taking a step closer to the man, Thomas spoke up. "We can work together. I know this land." Sarah pulled the letter tighter to her chest. "I want to deliver this to my mother. I need to let her know I'm okay." The man's expression softened, a glimmer of understanding crossing his face. "All right then, how about we travel together?" As she looked between the two men, Sarah's heart swelled with hope. Perhaps, just perhaps, this was a new beginning. She didn't have to face the world alone anymore. There was warmth in companionship, in shared destinies. They decided to set off together, gathering their few belongings. Thomas made sure to keep an eye out for any signs of danger, aware that the wild could be unforgiving. But as they started walking down the road, the air felt lighter, filled with laughter and the promise of newfound dreams. Days turned into weeks. The trio faced challenges together, moments that forged their bond even tighter. Climbing steep hills, navigating through dark forests, they shared stories around the campfire at night. Sarah learned to be brave and strong. Thomas's encouragement, she began to believe in the future she once thought was beyond her reach. One evening, as the sun set against the horizon, painting the sky with hues of orange and purple, they settled near a bubbling stream. They shared a simple meal, laughter mingling with the sound of rushing water. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Sarah pulled out the letter again. "I think it's time, she said, glancing at both men. I want to send this. Thomas nodded, pride swelling in his chest. You're ready, the rugged man held Sarah's gaze, a smile creeping across his face. I'll help you. In that moment, everything crystallized for Sarah. She felt the weight of her past shift, releasing her fears. Her dreams were within reach now, and she no longer felt lost. With Thomas and the rugged man by her side, she realized they were more than just companions. They were family in this vast wilderness. As they traveled further into the unknown, Sarah held onto her dreams tighter than ever. It didn't matter how far she had come from that sleepy moment beneath the wagon. Together, they could conquer anything life threw their way. And with every step, the future brightened, a promise of adventure and hope laid out before them, waiting patiently to be claimed. He first noticed her when the morning light pierced through the branches of the old oak trees. Thomas Hayes, a man of the land, had been drifting in and out of sleep, the creaking of his wagon lulling him into a comfortable doze, but something stirred his instincts. A sound, a whisper of movement, coaxed him awake. As he rubbed the sleep from his eyes, he peered from behind the wooden frame of his wagon, heart racing, breath caught in his throat. There she was, a girl no older than 19, curled up in a shivering ball beneath his wagon. Her hair, wild and tousled, spilled out like dark ribbons across the dry earth. Something about her seemed fragile, as if the weight of the world had pressed her down. His brow furrowed as he noticed the letter clutched in her small hand, crumpled and worn from her desperate grip. Who was she? How did she get here? Thomas's mind churned with questions as he crouched by the wheel, his heart pounding like a drum echoing in the stillness of the morning. This wasn't an ordinary find. No, this was something deeper. He hesitated for just a moment, then reached down gently to shake her shoulder. He asked, his voice steady like the calm after a storm. Her eyelids fluttered open, revealing striking blue eyes that mirrored the endless sky. Fear danced in her gaze as she sat up, surprised and bewildered like a deer caught in the light of a lantern. She scrambled back against the wheel, the letter slipping from her grasp. She croaked, her voice trembling like the leaves in the wind. I'm Thomas, he replied softly, allowing compassion to flow through his words. You shouldn't be out here alone. The girl paused, her breath shallow, then nodded slowly, tears glistening in her eyes. I was running away. He could sense the weight of her words. He urged gently, determined to help her find her voice. Her voice broke as she spoke, heavy with anguish. You wanted me to marry a man I don't love. I just wanted to be free. Her resolve faltered, and she glanced down at the letter resting on the ground. Thomas's heart ached for her. He remembered the fears of youth, the suffocating grip of expectations. Here she was, a lost soul on a wild road, and he thought about the stories that had shaped his own life. He asked, motioning toward the crumpled paper. She picked it up hesitantly, unfolding it as if it were a fragile bird landing in her hands. Dear Mama, if you're reading this, then I've made it away. As she read, her voice grew stronger, tinged with defiance. I hope you understand that I want more than what this life has laid out for me. The words lingered in the air, leaving a haunting echo of longing. Thomas leaned in closer, captivated by her strength. You're brave for wanting more, Sarah, he said, finding comfort in the name. The girl looked at him, her eyes brightening at his understanding. She asked, a flicker of hope igniting within her. He met her gaze, willing her to see her own worth. But first, we need to find a way to get you that letter. As she gathered her courage, a rustle in the bushes made both of them jump. Suddenly, a rugged man appeared, eyes narrowed like storm clouds, hands clenched at his sides. He growled, suspicion lacing his voice. Thomas shouted, stepping protectively in front of Sarah. We're not a threat. The man studied them, hesitance breaking through his hardened expression. She doesn't look safe. Her name is Sarah, Thomas explained, a steady resolve building in his words. She's trying to escape a life that suffocates her. The man scoffed, skepticism engraved in his features. Because she doesn't want that life anymore, Thomas countered, frustration bubbling within him. Look at her, she's not just running. For a moment, silence hung in the air, thick like fog. Then Sarah stepped forward, her chin raised defiantly. I'm not just a girl to be pushed around. The man's expression softened, and Thomas could see a flicker of understanding in his eyes. The rugged stranger hesitated, then sighed. All right then, if that letter is so important, then let's get it to someone who can help, he said, his voice lowering, revealing an unexpectedly tender side. Thomas exhaled, relief washing over him. This man, despite his rough exterior, understood the fire in her heart. Thank you, he said, then looked at Sarah, pride swelling inside him. As they set off together, the new trio formed an odd but heartfelt bond. The landscape transformed around them, the sky expansive and limitless, just like their dreams. Each step felt like a leap of faith, fueled by a shared desire for freedom and purpose. Days became weeks, filled with hardships and laughter alike. Under the wide, open sky, they conquered challenges together. Climbing rocky hills and navigating through shadowy forests, they forged a connection that was genuine and powerful. Evenings, they gathered around flickering campfires, sharing stories of their respective journeys. The rugged man, whose name was Lucas, revealed snippets of his own past, a childhood filled with struggle and a fight to survive on his own. You can't let the world dictate your dreams, he said one night, looking straight into Sarah's eyes. You have to chase them down. Thomas nodded in agreement, feeling the warmth of camaraderie. Watching Sarah draw strength from their shared experiences was more precious than gold. She was a flower pushing through concrete, blooming against all odds. Through every storm and sleepless night when fear crept in like a shadow, they stood by one another, nourishing each other's hopes. One fateful evening, as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Sarah sat beside the fire, the letter clutched in her hand like a talisman. "It's time," she said quietly, determination filling her voice. Lucas nodded, admiration lighting his rugged face. "We'll get it to someone who can help," Sarah asked, brow furrowed. "When you find your mother, don't stop there, don't forget about you, don't be the girl who lost herself." Tears spilled over Sarah's cheeks as she registered the weight of his words. This wasn't just about the letter anymore. This was about claiming her future. Her dreams called to her, whispering sweet promises of possibility. They traveled on, crossing rivers and scaling hills, until they found a small town nestled against a serene lake. It was different from the harsh wilderness, and a sense of hope filled the air. Sarah found a post office, its wooden sign swaying gently in the breeze. With trembling hands, she stepped inside. Thomas and Lucas stood watch nearby, their hearts swelling with pride. Thomas could see the fire of determination blazing in her eyes as she approached the counter. "I need to send this letter," she said, holding it out to the clerk, her voice unwavering. As the clerk took the letter, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of release. She had done it. She was no longer just running, she was moving forward. The weight of expectation began to lift, and she felt a new strength rise within her. Once the letter was gone, she turned to Thomas and Lucas with a radiant smile that shone like the sun breaking through clouds. "It's done." "Now the real adventure begins," Lucas grinned, clapping her shoulder. With new energy coursing through them, the trio decided to stay in the town for a while. They explored the quaint streets where laughter filled the air and dreams floated like the clouds. Sarah felt alive, each moment igniting a fire within her. She was not just surviving, she was living. As days turned into weeks, Sarah began to carve her own path. She found work at a local shop, her heart swelling with pride when she earned her first paycheck. She met new friends and learned the joys of community. And through it all, Thomas and Lucas remained her steadfast allies, encouraging her every step of the way. Each time a letter arrived, a flicker of hope surged through her. Her mother's responses, filled with love and reassurance, reminded her that she was not alone. Sarah's dreams were no longer distant fantasies. They were tangible, something she could reach for every day. One evening, while walking by the lake, she whispered her wishes into the water, letting the moonlight reflect the promise of her future. "I want to be a writer. I want to share these stories to inspire others like me," she declared, her voice steady, full of purpose. Thomas, watching from a distance, felt a wave of pride for this young woman who had transformed before his eyes. Her journey had unfolded like a book, each page revealing a new chapter. As seasons shifted, so did Sarah. She faced her fears and learned to embrace uncertainty, and every challenge, every stumble became a stepping stone, carving her into the person she dreamt of becoming. One fateful evening, under a sky filled with stars, she sat with Thomas and Lucas, sharing their dreams. "Thank you for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself," she said, her voice thick with gratitude. Thomas smiled, feeling the warmth of their shared journey fill the space between them. "You're a beacon of hope, Sarah." And as they all marveled at the vastness above, Sarah knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be, no longer defined by fear, but blossoming into the person she was always meant to become. Life on the frontier had become their canvas, vibrant with possibility. Together, they stood defiant against the world, ready to chase their dreams. It was just the beginning of their story. Thomas Hayes wiped the sleep from his eyes early that brisk morning, the chill in the air nipping at him as he stepped outside. The sun hadn't yet risen fully, and the world was painted in shades of gray, shrouded in a mystic fog. But something stirred under his wagon, a soft rustling breaking the hush of dawn. Curiosity pulled at him. He moved closer, heart racing in his chest, a sense of foreboding filling the silences around him. What he found made his breath catch. A girl not much older than 17 lay curled beneath his wagon. Her clothes were tattered, and her hair, a cascade of dark waves, was tangled and dirty. The dirt beneath her was streaked with tears that had dried on her cheeks, and a crumpled letter rested in her delicate fingers. Who was she, and why was she sleeping there alone? Thomas knelt, heart pounding, unsure of how to rouse her without startling her. He gently shook her shoulder. She stirred, eyelids fluttering open slowly, revealing bright blue eyes that widened in confusion and fear. A moment of panic rippled through her as she found herself face to face with a stranger. She gasped, scrambling backward against the wooden wheel. Thomas raised his hands in a gesture of peace. "I'm Thomas. No harm, I promise." The girl blinked, her gaze darting to the letter slipping from her grip. I'm Sarah," she stammered, wiping the sleep from her eyes as she glanced at her surroundings. "I must have," Thomas echoed, concern flooding his chest. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, and she swallowed hard. "My father, he wants to force me to marry a man I don't love. I couldn't take it anymore." Thomas felt a pang of solidarity. He remembered the weight of expectation, the crushing sense of duty that sometimes felt like a prison. "You're brave for doing that," he replied gently, "but it's dangerous out here." "I didn't think anyone would come after me," she replied, voice trembling, glancing back at the letter. He could see the weight of her words. She clutched the letter like it was the last remnant of her past, a fragile piece of hope in her hand. He asked, motioning toward it. Sarah hesitated, her eyes flickering with uncertainty. "It's for my mother," she whispered, her voice shaking as she slowly unfolded the crumpled paper. As she read aloud, her voice wavered but grew stronger with each word. "Dear Mama, if you're reading this, I'm sorry I had to leave. I don't want to marry him." The letter spoke her truth, and Thomas felt a mixture of admiration and sorrow for this girl who was fighting so fiercely for her freedom. "Your mother deserves to know you're safe," he said, placing a comforting hand on her shoulder. Just as they talked, a rustle in the nearby brush made both of them jump. Thomas instinctively positioned himself between Sarah and the sound. His heart raced again as a man stepped into view, tall, rugged, with a weathered face that held a mixture of curiosity and suspicion. The man barked, eyes narrowing as they darted between Sarah and Thomas. "Her name is Sarah," Thomas replied, keeping his voice steady. "She's been running away from something," the man scoffed. Sarah stepped forward, anger flashing in her eyes. She retorted, her voice growing stronger. The man's expression softened just a bit as he studied her. "What do you think you're doing, girl? It changes everything," she shot back, defiance burning in her gaze. As Thomas watched this exchange, he felt the air shift. There was something about Sarah's fiery spirit that grabbed hold of them both. The man's posture relaxed as he ran a hand through his scruffy hair. "All right then, I need to get this letter to my mother," Sarah said, clutching the paper as if it contained her very soul. "Then we need to stick together," the man said, finally backing down. "I'm Lucas. It's dangerous out here." The three of them stood in the clearing, each of their hearts pounding with a mix of fear and determination. Thomas could see that Sarah had found unlikely allies, and with a nod, he felt their collective strength beginning to form. "Let's get moving," Thomas said, glancing at the sun rising higher in the sky. As they set off into the unknown, a strange camaraderie lined the trail ahead. Thomas led the way, his gaze focused on the road ahead while glancing back at Sarah. She walked with determination, and he admired her resilience. They traversed rocky hills and dense forests, each footstep becoming a powerful beat in the symphony of their journey. The woods seemed to whisper secrets, a chorus of rustling leaves and distant birds calling to one another. The world outside felt both beautiful and terrifying, and eventually, as they made camp one evening, Sarah opened up more about her past. "Before all this, I thought I could live a different life. I wanted to write stories to inspire people. But my father only saw me as a pawn in his game," she said, voice trembling. "You're not alone in that," Thomas replied, sharing a piece of his own past. "I've chased dreams too, only to find myself roadblocked by what others expect of me." Lucas, his eyes fierce, added, "Every choice shapes us." Fueled by their support, Sarah began to feel urgency blossom within her. With each day that passed, the longing to send the letter became stronger, but the uncertainty of what lay ahead lingered in the back of her mind like an unwanted shadow. Days turned to weeks, their trio forming a strange but beautiful family on the ragged road. They learned to trust each other, share their secrets, and laugh freely, even under the burden of their struggles. Each meal shared felt like a triumph beyond their fears, and slowly, Sarah found a new sense of purpose. One evening, gathered around a flickering campfire, Sarah clutched her letter close to her chest. She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Thomas leaned forward, placing a reassuring hand on her arm. "It's possible, but you must be willing to chase the life you want." With a nod, she steeled herself, and just like that, they had to plan. The next morning, as the sun emerged anew, they set their sights on a nearby town, a place where Sarah could send the letter. As they approached the town, a sense of dread danced in her stomach, gnawing at her resolve. Sarah asked, eyes wide with fear as they walked through the bustling streets, the sounds of laughter and chatter swirling around them. Thomas, seeing the vulnerability hiding beneath her bravery, responded with calm conviction. "The only way to know is to try." Once they reached the post office, Sarah's heart raced. She felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff, poised to jump into the unknown. As she stepped inside, the weight of the room closed in on her, the tension palpable. An older woman behind the counter looked up, her expression friendly but curious. "I need to send this letter," Sarah said, voice trembling, feeling the moment spill into everything she had fought for. The woman took the letter from her hand, her gaze softening as she read the address. She asked gently. Sarah nodded, feeling the tears well up once more. "I haven't seen her in so long." The woman asked, and Sarah's heart dropped into her stomach. What if the letter never made it? What if this was just another dead end? Thomas and Lucas stood close, supportive as they waited in tense silence. Then the woman returned with a stamp and a reassuring smile. "It's on its way." As the weight of that moment washed over Sarah, a surge of relief cascaded through her. "Thank you," she whispered, the words heavy with meaning. Walking outside, she felt the sun warm her face, and for the first time in a long while, hope began to blossom within her. She wasn't alone anymore. She had taken a huge step forward and each breath felt lighter. With the letter sent, they decided to take a break in the nearby park. They sprawled on the grass, basking in the sun's warmth as laughter filled the air. Thomas turned to Sarah. "What's next for you?" "I want to write," she said, her eyes shining with ambition. Lucas grinned. "That's a worthy dream. You have the talent, Sarah." As days turned to weeks, Sarah began to write again. Each word flowed like a river, carving paths through her emotions. She found joy in sharing her stories by the fire each night. The spirits of her words danced between them, lighting their hearts as they took turns crafting tales spun from their own lives. One evening, just as Sarah read a story that tugged at their hearts, the skies darkened overhead. The sudden thunder rolled, crashing through their laughter like a tidal wave. The air thickened, a storm brewing in the distance. They gathered their belongings and sought shelter, huddled close as heavy rain began to pour. But even within the growling storm, their bond deepened. Sitting in the dim candlelight of their temporary refuge, they shared their hopes and dreams, each story revealing pieces of who they were. As the storm raged outside, it became clear their lives had intertwined, each one impacting the other in ways they could never have anticipated. Together, they made a family forged from shared struggles, laughter, and dreams pursued against all odds. When the storm finally passed, a breathtaking rainbow emerged, stretching across the sky like an artist's brushstroke. It felt like a sign of promise of new beginnings, a reminder of hope. With time, they ventured deeper into the world, traveling from town to town, Sarah sharing her burgeoning stories while Thomas and Lucas supported her, each step strengthening their bond. Word of her writing spread, and she found herself published in local papers, her voice resonating with more than just her immediate circle. Finally, one fateful letter arrived. It was thin, crisp, marked with her mother's familiar handwriting. A flurry of emotions swelled in Sarah's chest as she tore it open. The letter read, "My dear Sarah, your bravery shines through the words you've chosen. I understand your need to fly." Tears streamed down Sarah's face as she clutched the letter to her chest. Joy, pain, and hope collided within her. This was it. This was her moment. Her freedom had come full circle. On the path ahead, she could see the road winding toward her future, one filled with possibility, laughter, and all the stories yet to be told. Standing alongside Thomas and Lucas, she knew that each step they took would be toward a world where dreams weren't just for the fearless, they were for those brave enough to chase them. As they continued their journey together, the sun dipped low on the horizon, casting a warm glow over everything. With every heartbeat, she reveled in the realization that she was no longer just running away. She was running toward a life designed by her own hands, and with each step she carved her own story, a tale of courage, friendship, and the unwavering belief that freedom lies within each of us, if only we dare to seize it. The sun had barely risen when Thomas Hayes emerged from his wagon, the biting chill of dawn wrapping around him like a thick blanket. He rubbed the sleep from his eyes, the world still cloaked in a delicate fog. Shadows danced around the campsite, and for a moment all seemed peaceful. But as he stepped into the day, his senses tingled. Something felt off. There, beneath the sturdy wooden frame of his wagon, he noticed a figure, a girl, perhaps 17 or 18, curled up and sleeping soundly. Fear gripped his heart. Who was she? How did she end up here? He approached cautiously, legs trembling slightly. Her long, tangled hair lay across her face, and in her clenched hand was a folded paper, worn and crumpled. Thomas's curiosity morphed into concern. What was her story? He knelt down, heart racing. Gently, he shook her shoulder. He asked, searching her face for a sign of life. Her eyes flew open, wide and startled. She scrambled backward, pressing against the ground as if it might swallow her whole. She gasped, her voice shaking. "I'm Thomas," he replied softly, trying to ease the fear swelling in her eyes. "I mean no harm." She hesitated, glancing down at the letter in her hand. Thomas could see her mind racing, weighing her options like an acrobat balancing on a tightrope. I'm Sarah," she finally whispered. He pressed gently, shifting his weight to show he was not a threat. Her voice trembled like a fragile leaf in a storm. "From my father. He wanted me to marry someone I don't love." Her confession hung in the air, thick and heavy. Thomas sank deeper into her story, remembering his own struggles against the expectations that weighed down on him like a mountain. "You're brave for leaving," he said, his heart swelling with empathy. She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "I thought I could find freedom." As she spoke, her fingers instinctively clutched the letter tighter, her grip white-knuckled. Thomas asked, gesturing toward it, his voice low and encouraging. She sighed, glancing down. "It's for my mother. I need her to know I'm okay. I thought maybe." He urged gently. She unfolded it, her hands shaking. "Dear Mama," she began, her voice wavering at first but then gaining strength. "If you're reading this, it means I've made it away. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused. I just wanted to be free." Each word dripped with a raw, aching honesty that pierced Thomas's heart. He could see the yearning in her eyes, a desire for independence and identity. He wanted to help her, to fan the flame of her courage that was clearly struggling to ignite. "Sarah," he said, his tone warm and steady, "your mother deserves to know you're safe." As he spoke, they were interrupted by a rustling in the nearby brush. Thomas's instincts kicked in. He spun around, positioning himself protectively in front of her. a figure emerged from the shadows, a man with a rugged face and wild hair. He challenged, his voice strong and suspicious, eyes darting from Sarah to Thomas. "Hold on, we're not a threat," Thomas said with a firm yet calm voice. "This is Sarah." The man eyed him skeptically. "Because I wouldn't hurt her, she's just a kid," Thomas shot back, exasperation bubbling beneath his cool demeanor. At that moment, Sarah found her voice rising from the dirt like a phoenix. "I'm not just a kid," she faced the man, her eyes blazing with defiance. The man's expression softened, though he still stood tall and guarded, arms crossing over his chest. "Fine, it seems you're rather determined. You're lucky he found you." Adamant, Sarah clenched her jaw. "It's not pity," the man replied. "It's survival. I'm Lucas. I know these parts well." Thomas glanced at Sarah, their shared determination reflected in each other's eyes. "Together," he said, "we can get you to safety." They gathered their things, the urgency palpable as finally they began walking down the dirt path together. The trees whispered secrets around them, and the tension between them softened into a tentative camaraderie. As they walked, Sarah found herself torn between fear and a burgeoning sense of hope. She had been escaping for so long, and now she was moving towards something, a possibility. Days turned into an unrelenting march across the rugged landscape. Thomas and Lucas became her allies, and slowly as they traveled, Sarah shared more of her story. They climbed steep hills, crossed rivers, and made camp under an endless tapestry of stars that reminded her of her dreams. One night, as they sat around a crackling campfire, Sarah pondered her future aloud, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas looked up, his gaze steady. "Do you really believe that? A mother's love is powerful." She countered, the doubt creeping in like a thief in the night. "Disappointment. You're not living for anyone else's expectations. You're carving your own path," Thomas said, voice filled with conviction. With their words, the shadows lurking in her heart began to dissolve, replaced by a flicker of belief. She wanted to write again, to share her story with the world, but uncertainty kept tugging at her. As they moved through towns, Sarah found herself drawn to making small notes in a little journal she found in one of the shops. Her stories flowed from her heart, embroidered with her emotions and experiences. Each sentence became a release. The ink didn't just dance across the page, it sang for her freedom. Weeks passed, with the trio forging a bond that felt like a family. Then came the fateful day when they approached a town bustling with life. The streets were filled with chatter, laughter, and the scent of baking bread wafting through the air. But amidst the vibrancy, dread clawed at Sarah's insides. She mused, voice trembling, glancing around at the colorful stalls and boisterous townsfolk. Thomas placed a hand on her shoulder. "You won't know until you try. Your mother deserves to know you're okay." Determined, they entered the post office, the wooden door creaking open as a soft bell chimed. Sarah's heart pounded as she approached the counter, her gaze fixed on the woman behind it. The clerk asked, her warm smile inviting yet filled with curiosity. "I need to send this letter," Sarah said, her voice wavering as she pulled the crumpled paper from her pocket. The clerk took the letter, her expression shifting as she read the address. She inquired gently. "Yes," Sarah whispered, the weight of her heart pressing against her chest. The clerk nodded, processing the letter with care, and for a moment time stood still. In that small act, Sarah felt the burdens of doubt begin to lift. "It'll go out today," the woman assured, her kindness wrapping around Sarah like a warm embrace. Once outside, Sarah's face broke into a smile, a burst of sunshine after the storm. "It's done," she breathed, fresh emotions swirling within her, mingling hope with exhilaration. As they walked away, Lucas turned to her. "It's the first step toward your new life. I want to find a way to share my stories, to inspire like you both did for me," she declared, determination lighting her features. From that day, the universe felt like a canvas under her hands. She took on new challenges and seized every opportunity to write. Words flowed like a river, her journal filled with dreams, ideas, and stories that sang from her spirit. But with every new burst of joy, an old fear crept in. What if it all fell apart? What if she was still just the girl hiding beneath a wagon? Then came the unexpected letter. Its neatly folded edges held her mother's familiar handwriting. With trembling fingers, Sarah ripped it open. Inside was the warmth of a mother's love. "You'll always have a place in my heart," it read. Tears blurred her vision, but these weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of release. In that moment, Sarah pushed aside the chains of doubt and fear, embracing the freedom her mother's words offered. Under the endless skies, they continued their journey together. Sarah felt the vibrant pulse of the world around her, each step echoing a rhythm that set her heart free. She was not just running away, she was running toward a destiny all her own. As they explored new towns, sharing laughter and friendship, Sarah began to feel alive. She performed her stories in town squares, each word resonating with the people who listened, and with every audience her spirit soared higher. One night, gathered under a blanket of stars, she looked at Thomas and Lucas, realization washing over her. "You've shown me that there's beauty in the struggle." "Of course," Thomas replied, pride shining in his eyes. "It's your life." With that, Sarah knew this was just the beginning of an incredible journey. Fueled by hope and dreams, she embraced the stories inside her, eager to write the next chapters of her life. Every adventure, every heartache, every laugh and tear transformed her into the woman she was always meant to be. As they journeyed on through valleys and mountains, Sarah became a beacon of strength, a testament to the power of believing in oneself. And so, beneath the vast sky, surrounded by newfound friends, she chose to chase her dreams. No longer the girl hiding in shadows, but a young woman blazing her own trail with a heart full of stories yet to tell. He squinted into the early morning light, the world still shrouded in mist, when he felt something odd beneath his wagon. Thomas Hayes, a seasoned traveler on the rugged frontier, had lived through many days of solitude and struggle, but this moment stirred a different kind of tension in his chest. Curiosity tinged with unease compelled him closer. There, nestled in the shadows, lay the small figure of a girl, not much older than 17, fast asleep. Her long hair fell in disarray around her face, and her clothes were tattered as if she'd fled from something terrible. The mid-morning breeze carried the lingering scent of pine and wildflowers, but her presence was an anomaly. Clutched tightly in her hand was a folded piece of paper, creased and crumpled, as if she had held onto it for dear life. Thomas's heart raced. Who was she? How had she ended up out here, alone and vulnerable? His instincts as a protector kicked in. Crouching down, he gently shook her shoulder. The girl stirred, her eyes fluttering open to reveal a mix of fear and confusion. She quickly recoiled, pressing against the wooden wheel of the wagon, her breath hitching in her throat. She gasped, her voice trembling. "I'm Thomas," he responded, trying to project calm. "I mean you no harm." She blinked away the remnants of sleep, panic flaring in her gaze. Sarah," he echoed softly, trying to gauge her demeanor. A shudder ran through her as she pulled her knees to her chest. "I was running away," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "From my father. He wanted me to marry someone I didn't love." Thomas felt a resonance in her words, echoing back to his own struggles with authority and expectation. "You're brave for leaving," he said gently. Her fingers unconsciously clutched the letter tighter, trembling as she glanced at it. He asked, a mix of curiosity and concern creeping into his tone. She hesitated, staring at the paper as if it held the key to her very soul. "It's for my mother," she finally said, emotions welling in her eyes. "I need her to know that I'm okay. I thought maybe." "Then let's get it to her," Thomas urged, the protective instinct blossoming inside him. Just then, a movement in the nearby bushes sent a jolt through both of them. Thomas quickly straightened up, instinctively putting himself between her and the sound. Emerging from the shadows was a man, tall and imposing, with a face weathered by time and hardship. He barked, his voice stern as he eyed both of them skeptically. Thomas shouted, "We're not a threat." The man's piercing gaze studied Thomas, then shifted to Sarah, who shrank back against the wagon. He challenged. "She's Sarah," Thomas said firmly. The rugged man seemed to relent, his expression softening slightly. Sarah's voice cut in, filled with a fiery determination. "I don't need a protector." A flicker of surprise crossed the man's face, quickly replaced by an understanding that seemed to bridge the gap between them. "All right then," he said, crossing his arms. "I'm Lucas." The alley of trees around them whispered secrets, and the weight of their situation began to settle in. "We'll figure this out together," Thomas said, looking into Sarah's eyes. With the sun rising into the blue sky, they formed an unlikely trio, stepping into the wild. As they traveled down the dirt path, the trees loomed like guardians, shadows playing tricks as they walked. Days turned into weeks. The landscape transformed around them, from dense forests to open fields bathed in golden light. Sarah found herself laughing with her companions, sharing stories, dreams, and the weight of their burdens. At night, when they built campfires, she would speak about her ambitions. "I dream of being a writer," she said one evening, her voice resolute amidst the crackling flames. Lucas leaned forward, intrigued. "Then you must write, Sarah, write about what you see and feel." Encouraged by his words, Sarah began to capture her thoughts in journal entries. They transformed from simple sentences into vivid landscapes filled with emotion. One night, as they lay beneath a star-studded sky, Sarah suddenly felt the weight of her identity. She mused, fear creeping back into her voice like an unwelcome shadow. Thomas, feeling a pull to reassure her, replied, "You will find a way. Your bond with her will guide you." In Sarah's heart, hope flickered amidst the storms of doubt. Yet the edges of the unknown still felt daunting. Their journey continued with a steady rhythm, a dance between striving for freedom and facing the underlying fears that curled tightly around Sarah's heart. Thunderclouds occasionally rolled in, threatening to disperse their fragile peace. Then, the fateful day arrived when they came upon a bustling town. Joy and dread mingled in Sarah's chest as they entered the lively streets. Merchants called out, children laughed, and the aroma of fresh bread wafted through the air, a feast for the senses. But for Sarah, uncertainty weighed heavily. She whispered, her confidence wavering. "Sometimes you have to risk getting lost to truly find yourself," Lucas said, eyes glimmering with wisdom. Gathering her courage, Sarah resolved to send her letter. They approached a small post office, its weathered wooden sign swaying gently in the breeze. But as they stepped inside, Sarah's breath hitched. The room felt smaller as the clerk looked up, her expression both curious and warm. She asked. Sarah's voice trembled and the letter felt heavier in her hands. The clerk took the letter, eyes scanning it in solemn silence. "This is important to you," she said gently. "Yes," Sarah replied, warmth flooding her cheeks. After what felt like an eternity, the clerk smiled and assured her, "It'll go out today." Leaving the post office, a sense of freedom washed over Sarah. She exclaimed, joy illuminating her face. Lucas gave her a congratulatory pat on the back. As weeks turned into months, they continued their journey, Sarah gaining strength like a wildflower pushing through soil. With each town they entered, she began to tell her stories, her words resonating with the people who gathered to listen. She poured her heart and spirit into her writing, sending small pieces of her soul out into the world. Yet even as her confidence grew, so did the questions of her past. Would her mother still want her after all this time? Did she even have a home to return to? One evening, gathered around the crackling fire beneath a blanket of stars, Sarah broke the silence, looking into the flames. "What if my mother doesn't want me back? Disappointment is a part of life," Thomas said softly, "but courage is finding your way back to each other." In that moment, clarity washed over Sarah. She was not just a girl hiding beneath a wagon. She was a young woman forging her own path, creating a narrative uniquely hers. Then came a letter, a neatly folded paper carrying the familiar handwriting she had missed dearly. Her heart raced as she tore it open. "My dearest Sarah," it read, "I have missed you every day. I thought of you with love and hope, praying you would find your way. I've learned that love is not about possession, but understanding." Emotions swelled within her, tears spilling down her cheeks as the warmth of her mother's love enveloped her. She was no longer just a runaway, she was a daughter rooted in love, history, and connection. With her spirit ignited, Sarah took to her writing with renewed vigor. She began to pen her stories with a deep sense of purpose. The struggles she had faced transformed into ink on the pages, tales of courage, defiance, and ultimately, love. As they continued to journey through vibrant towns and lush landscapes, Sarah felt a shift. She was no longer just seeking freedom, she was embracing her identity. She understood that dreams were possible to catch when one dared to reach for them. Together, the trio explored the depths of not only the land, but also their hearts. Sarah's laughter rang through the night air as they shared stories, a tapestry woven with hopes and dreams of each person under the stars. One fateful night, as the fire crackled softly, Sarah turned to her companions. "You've helped me realize so much," she said, her voice steady. "I need to return home." Thomas nodded, his eyes glimmering with pride. With the summer sun rising, a warmth filled Sarah's chest as she made her way back to her mother, hand in hand with the stories of her journeys. Each step felt like a heartbeat, the rhythm of hope pulsing in her conscious heart. She had transformed, no longer just the girl who slept beneath a wagon, but a resilient woman eager to reclaim her space in her family, her community, and her own life story. As she approached her childhood home, she felt a wave of trepidation wash over her. But beyond that was the undeniable resolve that she had grown into someone worthy of love, dignity, and belonging. As she knocked on the door, the world around her faded and a sense of stillness enveloped her. The door opened and her mother stood there, time etched onto her face but love radiating from her eyes. In that moment, all doubts fell away. Her mother's voice cracked with emotion as they embraced, two hearts healing in tandem. "I'm home," Sarah whispered, tears mingling with laughter. The journey had shaped her in ways she never imagined. Life can be a winding road, marked with obstacles and adventures. Through the tumult and struggles, Sarah discovered the power of her own voice. She learned that freedom lies not just in escaping from something, but also in courageously stepping into the life waiting for you. With her mother by her side and the dreams woven into her stories, Sarah knew this was only the beginning of a new chapter, a chapter defined by hope, resilience, and boundless love. He walked out into the crisp morning light. The familiar sound of the wind whispered secrets through the tall grass. Thomas Hayes, a rugged man of the land, stretched his limbs, shaking off the remnants of sleep. It was the kind of day that promised adventure, yet he could feel a subtle shift in the air, as if something was waiting to be discovered. As he moved closer to his wagon, his heart skipped a beat. There, curled up beneath his vehicle, was a girl small and delicate, her hair a tangled mess around her face. She was sleeping soundly, and for a moment he wondered if she was a mirage conjured by his imagination. But the worn edges of her dress and the dirt smudging her cheeks told a different story. Instinct kicked in, pulling him closer. What was she doing here? He crouched down, relief battling with concern. "Hey," he said gently, shaking her shoulder. She sprang awake, eyes wide with fear, her body curling into itself. She gasped, her voice shaky. "I'm Thomas, I mean you no harm," he reassured her, raising his hands slightly as if to show he wasn't a threat. "Sarah," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper as she glanced around, taking in her surroundings. Something in her gaze spoke of deep-seated fear, and Thomas felt a pang in his chest. "What happened?" he asked softly, hoping to unravel the mystery that surrounded her. "My father wanted me to marry someone I didn't love," she murmured, looking down at the ground, shame washing over her features. "I had to leave, I didn't know where to go, so I just—" Thomas's heart ached for her. He could sense the weight of her words, the sadness and desperation hidden in her tiny frame. It's a brave thing to leave, but the world can be dangerous for someone so young. "I didn't want to be a prisoner of my own life," she said, defiance flickering in her eyes even as tears glistened at the corners. He felt an overwhelming tide of empathy for this brave girl who had taken such a leap. "You deserve to find your freedom," he agreed, "but first we need to get you somewhere safe." At that moment, Thomas's gaze fell to her hand where a crumpled piece of paper lay. He asked, pointing gently. Sarah hesitated, her fingers tightening around the letter. "It's a letter to my mother. I wanted to tell her I'm okay. Then we'll send it," Thomas said with conviction. "You deserve to know she's safe." Before Sarah could respond, a rustling sound shattered the moment. Instinctively, Thomas turned, positioning himself as a barrier between her and the noise. Emerging from the trees was a man, scruffy and wild, with sharp eyes and even sharper features. He demanded, narrowing his eyes as he scanned them both. Thomas shouted, voice firm, "Help her." The man shot back, arms crossed defensively. "She's been running away," Thomas explained. "Her father is forcing her into a marriage she doesn't want." As reality sunk in, the man's gaze shifted to Sarah. He asked, the suspicion in his tone wavering just slightly. "Sarah," she replied, her voice trembling. "I'm sorry." The man's expression softened, and slowly he relaxed his stance. "All right then, I'm Lucas," he said, eyes scanning the surroundings like a hawk. She echoed, bewilderment painted across her face. "Yeah," Lucas said, meeting her gaze. "Out here it's not just the bad folks you need to worry about. Together we can look out for one another," Thomas added, hoping to ease her fears. As the sun climbed higher, they began walking, moving cautiously down the dusty road. The tension around them started to dissolve, replaced by a fragile hope. Days turned into weeks. The trio created a makeshift family, huddled together against the elements and the uncertainties of the world. They traversed through rocky paths, crossed rivers, and camped beneath the open sky. They each had their stories, woven from pain and resilience. One night, as they gathered around a crackling campfire, Sarah found the courage to share more. "What if," she said, eyes glistening in the firelight. Lucas leaned forward, sincerity glimmering in his eyes. "You'll never know until you try. A mother's heart is strong." Thomas nodded, adding, "You've been brave enough to leave a life that stifled you." Those words settled in Sarah's heart like seeds taking root. She had felt so lost, but in this strange and wild place she was discovering her strength. The journey wasn't just about escaping, it was about finding herself. Each day brought new challenges, sometimes daunting. Dark clouds would roll in and Sarah would feel fearful, the echoes of her past lurking in the corners of her mind. Then came the day when they arrived at a small town, buzzing with life. Merchants hawked their wares, children laughed and played, and the air was thick with the rich scent of baked goods. But amidst the vibrant atmosphere, anxiety danced in Sarah's chest. She whispered, doubt creeping in again. "Life is a gamble," Lucas replied, his tone reassuring. With newfound resolve, they located a post office, its wooden door creaking as they stepped inside. Sarah felt a rush of nerves. The clerk behind the counter looked up, her expression friendly but curious. She asked, "I need to send this letter to my mother," Sarah said, her voice steadying even as tears threatened to spill. The clerk took the crumpled paper, scanning it with careful eyes. She asked, noting the trembling in Sarah's hands. "Yes," Sarah affirmed, determination igniting within her. With a nod, the clerk assured her it would be on its way. As they stepped outside, the weight of fear began to lift. Sarah exclaimed, elation filling her voice. "Now you can breathe," Thomas said, pride swelling in his chest. Days flowed into night, and Sarah continued to write her thoughts and dreams, each word acting as a release, a bridge to a brighter future. Lucas and Thomas became her rocks, their laughter and support sparking courage in her heart. However, the journey still brought reminders of her past lurking at every turn. She voiced again one evening, the fear bubbling within her. "Fear is a natural part of growth," Thomas reminded her. Inspired by their belief in her, Sarah began to visualize a new version of herself, a woman who could embrace her voice and seek her dreams. Then one evening, as they sat under a vast sky punctuated with stars, Sarah realized she was no longer that frightened girl beneath the wagon. "I want to be a writer," she declared to the night, feeling the truth resonate in her bones. Lucas smiled, his eyes glimmering with encouragement. "Then write, your story deserves to be told," he said. "You survived." Motivated, Sarah took to her journal with fervor. Words poured out, illuminating her thoughts and painting vivid pictures of her struggles and triumphs. Each page became a testament to her resilience, filled with raw emotion and hope. As the seasons changed, the moon waxed and waned, and so too did Sarah's confidence grow. She began sharing her stories in town squares, where gatherings sprouted like wildflowers. Her voice became a melody woven into the fabric of their lives, her words resonating with the souls of those who listened. But even amidst her successes, doubts lingered in the shadows. What if her mother rejected her? What if she had lost her place in the world? Then one day, as they were resting by a slow-moving river, a letter found its way into Sarah's hands, another neatly folded piece of paper with familiar handwriting. Almost reverently, she opened it, her heart racing. "Dear Sarah, I've thought of you every day. You are my daughter, and my love for you knows no boundaries. Please return home." Tears began to cascade down Sarah's cheeks. The weight of longing transformed into something beautiful. "I have a family that loves me," she whispered, the words flowing between sobs and smiles. With the sun setting behind mountains that painted the horizon in shades of orange and violet, Sarah felt something shift inside her. She was no longer just surviving. She was ready to reclaim her life. "I need to go home," she declared, resolve filling her voice. "I want to face my mother, face my fears." Lucas and Thomas nodded, supportive and proud. "You've grown into someone remarkable," Thomas said, voice steady. As they made their way back to her childhood home, Sarah felt a mix of fear and excitement dance in her chest. Each step echoed the rhythm of her heart, a cadence that whispered the promise of acceptance. Standing before the familiar door, uncertainty gripped her once more. The world felt quieter, as if holding its breath. Then she knocked, the sound resonating with an eternity of longing. When the door swung open, her mother stood there, a mix of joy and relief flooding her features. Time had etched its mark on her, but love radiated from her eyes. Her mother exclaimed, pulling her into the warmest embrace. In that moment, all doubts evaporated like mist in sunlight. "I'm home," Sarah whispered, tears of joy and relief welling up as she realized she had returned not just as the girl who ran away, but as a woman who had discovered her strength. Life can be a winding road, filled with unexpected turns and hardships. But through all the strife, she learned one undeniable truth, that courage is found not in never being afraid, but in facing what frightens you with the knowledge that you're capable of overcoming it. Together, they would navigate this new beginning, sharing laughter, tears, and stories yet to unfold. Sarah held the promise of new adventures close to her heart, ready to pen her next chapter, a story of homecoming, resilience, and the unyielding power of love. He heard a soft rustling as he stepped out from behind the warmth of his wagon. The sun had barely begun to climb over the horizon, painting the world in muted shades of pink and orange. Thomas Hayes paused, staring across the wide expanse of land before him. It was quiet, too quiet, but something pulled him closer to the wagon, a sensation tingling at the back of his mind. As he crouched down, peering beneath the wooden frame, his heart lurched. There she was, a girl no older than 17, curled up tightly in a ball, sound asleep. Her hair was a wild mess, framing her face like a halo, and dirt smudged her cheeks, evidence of a long, hard journey. Clutched in her small hand was a crumpled piece of paper, cradled protectively as if it contained her very soul. Thomas called softly, shaking her shoulder gently. Her eyes flew open, filled with pure panic as she scrambled back, pressing her back against the wagon wheel. She gasped, breath quickening, her voice shaking. "Easy there," he responded, his hands raised in non-threatening gesture. "I'm Thomas, I won't hurt you." "Sarah," she replied, wariness still etched in her features, those blue eyes widened with fear, darting to the edges of the world around her. "I'm just trying to help," he said, his voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "Running away," she whispered, and the confession felt like a weight lifting from her chest. "From my father, I can't." A pang of empathy shot through him. He had faced his own struggles against expectations and obligations, and in that moment he felt an urge to protect this brave girl. "You shouldn't be out here by yourself," she challenged, yet tears glistened in her eyes, betraying her bravado. Thomas softened. "I believe you, but let's find a safer place." She glanced down at the letter still clutched in her hand. "This is for my mother," she said, hesitating. "I wanted to tell her I'm okay. I thought maybe I could send it." Her voice trailed off. "Let me see it," he encouraged gently. Slowly, she unfolded the letter, her fingers trembling. "Dear Mama, if you're reading this, then I've made it away. I'm sorry for the pain I've caused." Each word dripped with raw emotion and unfiltered truth that tightened Thomas's chest. He leaned closer. "You deserve to let her know you're safe, but we need to keep moving." With a cautious nod, she slowly got to her feet, the determination in her eyes beginning to overshadow her fear. Just then, a rustle in the nearby brush jolted them both. Thomas turned, heart racing, ready to protect her again as a rugged man emerged from the trees. The man barked, eyes narrowing suspiciously between them. Thomas said, keeping his voice steady, "We're not a threat. She's been running away." The man studied them, his expression skeptical. "Running away? Because she's just a girl trying to be free," Thomas replied, anger creeping into his voice. "Her family wants to force her into a life she doesn't want." The man seemed to relent slightly. Thomas could see the protective instincts in him too. He asked Sarah, glancing her way. "Sarah," she uttered, carefully unsure about her surroundings. All right, Sarah," he interrupted, his tone softer now. "You shouldn't be wandering these woods without protection. I'm Lucas." A flicker of hope ignited within Sarah's eyes. This was an unexpected alliance, two strong figures willing to support her on this treacherous journey. "Okay," she agreed, her voice steadier. Then let's get moving," Thomas said, feeling the urgency swell. "There's a town not far from here." The sun had risen higher in the sky as they started walking, the promise of a new day mingling with the uncertainty that still lingered around them. The path ahead was filled with overhanging branches and the sounds of nature. However, a sense of camaraderie began to form, a fragile bond built from shared goals and traumas. Days rolled into weeks as they traveled deeper into the heart of the wilderness. They faced challenges together, climbing steep hills and crossing fast-running streams. During those quiet nights beneath the stars, Sarah began to open up more about her life. My father never understood me, she said one night, the flickering campfire illuminating her face. He always saw me as an opportunity, a bargaining chip. I was never his daughter in his eyes, I was a tool to advance his interests. Pain echoed through her words, resonating with Thomas. He had wrestled with expectations and the weight of family obligations in a world that judged harshly. You deserve to chase your own path, he assured her. As the days turned into nights, the trio forged a bond rooted in trust and understanding. Their laughter mixed with moments of heartfelt discussions, a tapestry of camaraderie wrapped around their journey, one that shaped the person Sarah was becoming. But even as she found her footing, moments of doubt crept in. She wondered aloud, staring into the flames. What if my mother doesn't want me back? Lucas looked thoughtful. None of us can predict the future, but you have to act on hope. With each passing challenge, Sarah began to believe in herself more. Her fears transformed into fuel, propelling her to pen her thoughts and emotions into a small journal she had found in an abandoned cabin. Every word she wrote was a welcome release, each page acting as a reminder that she was more than just a girl escaping unwanted circumstances. She was a storyteller. There was truth in her writing, raw and unfiltered. One fateful evening, they approached a small town buzzing with life. Laughter and chatter filled the air as children ran past, their joy contagious yet daunting. The transition from the wilderness to society felt like crossing into another world. Sarah whispered, the panic creeping back in. Sometimes you need to take a leap of faith, Thomas replied, determination in his eyes. With that encouragement, the trio moved through the bustling streets, seeking the post office where Sarah could send her letter. They found it wedged between a bakery and a general store, the scent of freshly baked bread wafting in the air. As they entered, a jingle announced their arrival. The clerk looked up, a friendly smile crossing her face. Hello, I need to send this letter to my mother, Sarah said, her hands trembling as she pulled the crumpled paper from her pocket. The clerk's expression turned serious as she took the letter, scanning it carefully. This means a lot to you, she said, handing it back with a nod. Stepping outside, Sarah felt an overwhelming sense of relief and excitement. She cried, tears forming at the edges of her eyes. Thomas smiled, pride radiating from his expression. That's a big step forward. I can't believe I actually did it, Sarah said, a laugh bubbling up from within her. Life continued to dance forward, but the doubts still tangled within her heart. Soon, Sarah began sharing her stories at village gatherings, her words capturing the attention of those around her. During one such gathering, she recited tales of her journey, the struggles she faced, and her desire for freedom. People listened, rapt attention replacing their initial disbelief. Afterward, they approached her, praising her bravery and expressing how her stories resonated deeply. You have a gift, Sarah, one man said, a warm smile on his face. Write more, another added. With each passing day, confidence surged, filling Sarah like an invisible shield. Writing became a therapy session, and she cherished every opportunity to express herself. Yet despite the warmth of newfound friendships, the question remained, what about her mother? Would she still want her after all this time? One evening, as they sat around the fire, Sarah turned to her companions. She said, trembling slightly at the thought, we can't predict how others will feel, Lucas said thoughtfully. You're learning to embrace yourself. The weight of his words flickered in the air. Finally, she nodded, feeling the spark of hope reconnecting within her. She wasn't condemned to a life of disappointment. She was forging her own destiny, piece by piece. Then came the day that Sarah received a letter in return, its neatly folded corners adorned with familiar handwriting, a fragment of her past that ignited hope deep within her. She felt the weight of the world lift as she tore it open. Dear Sarah, it began, I've missed you more than words can say. Please know that you are loved and always welcome home. Tears of joy streamed down her face, a flood of emotion washing over her. She wanted to rush back into her mother's warm embrace, to reclaim what had once felt lost. I have to go back, she declared to Thomas and Lucas, her voice steadfast. Go to your mother, Thomas said, pride swelling in his chest. You've grown into someone remarkable. With their support, Sarah made the journey home, retracing her steps through both wild landscapes and the familiar town path. Each moment filled her with the rhythm of hope and resolution. As she approached her childhood home, her heart raced. Fear and excitement mingled within her, each breath growing more deliberate. Standing at the door, she knocked softly, her heart pounding like thunder. Time seemed to stretch as the door creaked open. There stood her mother, but time had etched lines on her face. Yet in her eyes, love bloomed like a wildflower. Her mother cried, and all the fear melted away as they embraced. The world fell away, and it was just them, two hearts reuniting, two souls connected by an unbreakable bond. I'm home, Sarah whispered, feeling the warmth of acceptance envelop her. As they began to rebuild what had been lost, Sarah realized life was not just about escaping. It was about embracing the totality of experience, love, loss, and the unyielding courage to chase your own truth. And so, with every spoken word, every shared laugh, she reclaimed her identity, not just as a daughter, but as a storyteller. Her life became a vivid narrative painted with the hues of resilience and hope, the kind of story that whispers in the hearts of others and invites them to find their own freedom. He stepped out into the dim light of dawn, the chill of the morning biting at his skin. Thomas Hayes rubbed the sleep from his eyes, lifting his gaze to the vast expanse of the wild frontier. But something caught his attention, an unusual sound beneath his wagon, a faint rustling that whispered of secrets. Intrigued, he crouched down, peering into the shadowy space below the wooden frame. There she was, a girl no older than 18, curled up tight against the dirt. Her hair fell in wild tangles around her face, and her thin, worn dress clung to her like a faded memory. Thomas's heart raced as he noticed the crumpled letter clutched in her small hand. A jolt of concern rippled through him. How had she ended up here, alone and vulnerable? He called softly, shaking her shoulder. The girl stirred, her eyes shooting open as panic filled them. She scrambled backward, pressing herself against the wheel of the wagon. She gasped, breaths coming too quickly. "I'm Thomas," he said gently, raising both hands to assure her he meant no harm. "I won't hurt you. I'm Sarah," she stammered, searching his eyes for the truth in his words. He asked, concern threading through his voice. Her cheeks flushed as she took a shaky breath. "I was running away." "From my father," she confessed, her voice quaking. "He's trying to force me into a marriage." Thomas felt a visceral tug of empathy. He understood the weight of expectations, the suffocating ties of family and duty. "You're brave for leaving," he said softly, kneeling beside her. Her gaze fell to the letter in her hand, crumpled but still held tightly. "This is for my mother," she said, her voice a mere whisper. "I wanted to tell her I'm okay, I thought." "Let me see it," he urged, sensing the importance behind those words. She hesitated before unfolding the letter, her hands trembling. "Dear Mama," she began to read aloud, her voice fragile yet filled with emotion. "If you're reading this, it means I've escaped. I'm sorry for the pain this will cause, but I couldn't let you choose my life for me." Thomas could feel her pain resonating within him. The issues of family bonds and personal desires tangled like vines in a dark forest. "You deserve to let her know you're safe," he said, offering her reassurance in this turbulent moment. Before she could respond, a rustling from nearby bushes startled them both. Instinct kicked in and Thomas jumped up, placing himself protectively in front of Sarah. A man emerged from the shadows, rugged, tall, and with a look that could freeze fire. The man demanded, eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation with suspicion. Thomas shouted, his heart racing, "She's been running away." The man said, his tone harsh, yet there was a flicker of curiosity in his eyes as they drifted to Sarah. She interrupted, her voice trembling but firm. The man's posture softened, though he still held a guarded stance. "Fine, you're brave for leaving, but you're foolish for being out here alone. I'm Lucas." "Then let's stick together," Thomas suggested, looking from Sarah to Lucas. With a nod, they quickly gathered their belongings, the urgency of the moment pushing them forward. The journey ahead loomed like a mountain waiting to be climbed, filled with uncertainties and dangers they could not yet see. As they ventured deeper into the wilderness, the terrain shifted from familiar trails to thick underbrush, the sound of nature embracing them. Days passed and they formed a fragile alliance amidst the backdrop of the untamed frontier. One evening, gathered around a campfire, they shared stories, pieces of themselves unveiled like petals of a blooming flower. Sarah spoke of her desire to write, the dreams that ignited her spirit beyond the confines of her home. "I want to tell my story," she declared, her voice steady. Lucas leaned forward, his eyes glinting with admiration. "Then write, Sarah." Each day brought new challenges, and slowly the trio began to forge a bond built on trust. But even as Sarah's strength grew, shadowy doubts occasionally surfaced. She pondered aloud one night, wrapping her arms around her knees. "Fear is a natural response," Thomas insisted, the firelight flickering across his features. "But it doesn't define who you are. You're brave, Sarah." As weeks blurred into each other, Sarah began to feel a shift within her. She was not just a girl fleeing danger. She was weaving her identity from the fabric of her choices, and each word she wrote on the pages of her journal became a testament to her resilience. Then came a day when they stumbled upon a small town nestled against the edge of the forest. The vibrant life buzzing within the streets awakened something in Sarah, possibilities unfurled like petals in spring. Laughter bounced off the walls of the shops, and the smell of fresh bread wafted through the air. As they navigated through the throng of townsfolk, Sarah's heart raced, both with excitement and dread. She muttered, fear prickling her skin like the autumn chill. Thomas placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't know until you try." With determination and a fluttering heart, they found the local post office, its wooden door creaking as they entered. A friendly clerk sat behind the counter, but as Sarah stepped forward, her voice faltered. "I need to send this letter to my mother," she said, her hands trembling as she placed the crumpled note on the counter. The clerk looked at her with a mix of warmth and curiosity. Of course, Sarah hesitated, the weight of her past threatening to drown her. Her thoughts drifted to home, the suffocating expectations, the love swathed in control. "To Maplewood," she finally managed to say. The clerk nodded, processing her request. As they walked back into the streets, Sarah felt the sun warm her face, a flicker of hope igniting within her. "It's done," she exclaimed. We did it together, Lucas said, pride pooling in his eyes. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah continued to share and refine her stories. The words flowed effortlessly as she spoke at town gatherings, captivating her audience with tales of courage and hope. Despite her growing confidence, the fear of her mother loomed like a storm cloud overhead. Would her mother want her back? One night, gathered around the campfire, Sarah voiced the fear that had been haunting her. What if she doesn't forgive me? Your mother is human too. She will have her feelings and her fears, Thomas replied thoughtfully. But the bond you share is deep. Then one fateful evening, a drifter arrived in town, buzzing with news. He spoke of a tragic accident that had swept through Maplewood, claiming lives and homes. Fear rippled through the crowd as they listened, the weight of the words filling the air with a heavy tension. Sarah gasped, her heart racing. A wave of nausea hit her as she stood frozen in place. Lucas said, gripping her arm, "You can't assume the worst." With every ounce of resolve, she turned to Thomas and Lucas. "I have to go back," she said fiercely. Days passed, filled with tension and doubt as they made their way back to Maplewood. Each step felt heavier, the weight of uncertainty pressing down on her. Was her mother safe? Had she lost everything? As they approached the borders of her childhood home, anxiety coiled tightly in her chest. Every familiar sight, every tree and house, was riddled with memories, flooding her heart with emotions both sweet and bitter. She felt a flood of memories washing over her, time seemingly distorting as she stood on the threshold of her past. Then, just over a rise, she spotted a figure moving through the haze of smoke rising from the remnants of what had once been home. She shouted, heart racing. A voice cried out, pulling her from the depths of dread. The figure drew closer, and she strained her eyes to see. There, framed against the backdrop of destruction, stood her mother, coughing, dirty but alive. In that instant, all her fears dissipated like mist. Her mother rushed toward her, enveloping her in a fierce embrace. "Oh, my sweet girl." Tears streamed down her mother's face, mingling with soot as she held her tightly. "I'm home," Sarah whispered, feeling the weight of their separation collapse under the sheer power of love. But just as relief began to wash over her, a shout cut through the air, piercing the moment. "Sarah," Lucas yelled, his voice high with urgency. Before she could react, a group of men emerged from the smoke, faces twisted with anger and desperation. They brandished weapons, and the atmosphere shifted from a reunion to a profound threat. One of them shouted. Fear wrapped around Sarah like a vice, her heart pounding in her chest. She realized in that moment her journey was far from over. The challenges she faced were not just of her past, they loomed larger than she had ever anticipated. As chaos erupted around them, Sarah stood at the brink, her heart racing. Would she and her mother be able to escape this nightmare? What awaited them in this land that had once felt so safe? With everything hanging in the balance, Sarah braced herself for the fight of her life, the future uncertain as the darkness closed in around them. The struggle for their freedom had only just begun.